Hey guys, so that's I guess the topic of my presentation, finding your path. I'm just gonna start by I guess telling you guys my favorite quote that I wrote as the introduction paragraph of my American University essays, but it's that the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. And I think that throughout my university experiences in the 1.5 years at U of T and all through high school, I guess we all work towards finding why you're born and what you want to do with your life and what's going to fulfill you, what's really going to make you happy going forward. So I guess as I scroll down, I hope to give you guys at least a way to figure out what you want to do, and also to tell you guys that it's never too late to figure out what you want to do, and there's still a lot of time. We're going to dive right into it. So I'm just going to introduce myself first. And so this is what I do for school. So I am a second-year undergrad. I'm studying for a Bachelor of Science. My major is in Nutritional Sciences, and my other major is in Fundamental Genetics, which, funnily enough, I am changing my major because I failed one of the midterms, and it's probably not a good idea to major in that. And I guess one of the things that I wanted to tell you guys about failing is that you will fail from time to time. Sometimes you'll fail in a way that you'll have to change your entire major, but it's okay. I found out what I really enjoyed doing, which was health policy, so I'm hoping to move my major to health policy in the second semester. And for high school, I went to Port Credit, so that's in Mississauga, and I was in the SciTech program. So if you guys have any questions about how I got through high school or how I applied to uni, that's sort of what I did. So currently, what I'm working on personally is that I'm a research assistant and a peer mentor. I work for the University Research Experience in Complex Systems. It's a big name, but basically all we do is we build simulation models to simulate any sort of thing. We simulate ecosystems, we simulate things from cells to entire environments to soil and mercury poisoning in lakes. And currently I'm working on insulin secreting beta cells and monitoring the differences between diabetic cells versus non-diabetic cells and how fast or how slow they secrete insulin. And also as a peer mentor, I actually help high school students work on their own research projects so they can develop their own models and they can publish their paper. And other than that, I actually write for a newspaper. That's an American newspaper, and I write for their inspirational column. And I'm also a compliance analyst at the G20 research group. And if you guys know what the G20 countries are, then it's just 20 countries that are pretty successful and very economically forward, and they meet together in a summit and they make all sorts of promises as to how they can improve the world, improve their economy as a whole. And I'm currently researching about how they're working cooperatively to improve health systems across the world, specifically in India and Indonesia. And lastly, I also have two jobs. I work as a customer service rep at Princeton Review. If any of you guys know, that's the SAT prep company. And I also work at another midterm prep company on campus. I guess I'm going to delve into choosing a career path. So does anybody here have any idea about sort of what they want to do with their life? Yeah?
Looking into health.
Medical or just health in general?
Just health in general.
Anybody else? Yeah?
Similar to Alex, but more focused on medical.
That's great, same. I always like to hear this quote, which is do what you love and you will never have to work a day in your life. Beside if anybody recognizes the picture, it's actually the Hippocratic Oath, because I want to be a doctor. And I guess this is what I like to tell everybody about whenever they ask me how I chose my career path, because up until grade 9, I always wanted to be a doctor, and then when I delved into grade 9 and I realized high school had a bunch of different options, they had accounting, they had law, I took all of those courses, and by the end of grade 12, I came back to wanting to be a doctor. And I decided to be a doctor not because of the money or anything else, but because I volunteered in a hospital, because I had enough experiences. I worked with my aunt in her own hospital in India as well, and I realized that what I wanted to do was help people and have the one-on-one impact. And I feel like in high school, a lot of people think that med school is the only way to go if they want to go into a health career, or if they want to enter a law field, then being a lawyer is the only thing they can do, and they can't really do anything else, which definitely turns out to not be the case. So I think it's important to take the time to explore what you love and to also make sure that you're going into a field that you know you're going to enjoy and you're not doing it because of any sort of pressure, but also to be practical about your career choices. I guess this is another thing that I also like to tell people is that no one else knows what they're doing either. I'm in second year of my undergrad. I'm still not sure if I'm going to make it into med school. I'm not sure if my GPA is good enough. I'm not sure if my extracurriculars are good enough. And I don't think anybody here in this room knows whether they're going to get into their dream university or they're not. Not everybody knows what the right path is to become a doctor, a lawyer, or anything else that you might want to do. It's about choosing your own path. It's about doing what you genuinely like to do and what you enjoy doing. And I think that is sort of the best way to figure out where you want to go. And one of my best advices to actually find out what you want to do is to get involved. Have new experiences, join different things, whether you might like them or you might not, but at least you'll know what you don't like doing if you end up hating it. I know a lot of people have questions about what first year of university is like and how different of a transition it is from high school. And so first year university, in terms of course content, is actually, at least for a science undergrad, it's a lot like high school. You take biology, chemistry, physics sometimes, not always, and calculus. But one thing that I learned is that you need to plan ahead. In my first semester, I did not plan my time well. I didn't end up doing very well in my courses, and I wasn't involved either. And I kept thinking that if I just focused on school, I'll do well. But in my second semester, actually, I got a job, I got a research position, and my marks became better. Not because I had more time, but because I learned to plan my time better. And I was also doing other things that kept me mentally healthier to accomplish sort of those grades that I wanted to get. And so I think the one thing that really helped me in my second semester was making a to-do list and constantly prioritizing what I'm doing. Make a list of all the deadlines and don't be shy to do like minute-to-minute planning. I think in second year, after having so many extracurriculars, that's what I've ended up doing. I literally sit down and plan my day from when I'm going to take breaks to when I'm going to finish some tasks. And it feels a little weird the first time you do it because you feel like you have to stick to a schedule. But when you get used to it, you realize how much easier it is and how much more efficiently you're able to finish your work, and also how much more fun you're able to have with your friends or have a social life outside. And also, in first year, show up to class. I know this seems obvious. Everybody told me that, and I thought I would do it until I did end up in my first year, and I did not go to class. So please go to class. It's going to get really hard to show up sometimes when they're in the morning or when you have a lot of things to do, but it definitely does help, so make the time to show up. And like I said, get involved. I've gotten involved in a lot of things in university, especially this year, and all of those have helped me sort of know what I like to do, know what I don't like to do, and also just make more friends and live a happier university life because it is not as depressing as everyone makes it sound. And just be open to new experiences and let life surprise you. And I say that because I've become friends with people in university that I never thought I would be friends with. I've had experiences I never thought I would have, like joining the D20 research group, because that is a totally social science thing and not, I guess, a medicine thing at all. But if you're just open to new experiences, then I think you can definitely learn more about what you like to do yourself. I always like this quote: don't miss out on something that could be amazing just because it could also be difficult. And that's very attached to choosing U of T. I think the biggest myths that I've encountered in picking U of T was that it's too difficult of a school, and that school isn't going to be fun, or is going to be too competitive, or the marking is too hard, or that they bell curve everyone down. Well, I'm here to tell you, first of all, bell curving is illegal. You cannot somehow be like given a lower grade than what you've already gotten. But also that even though we might be in a much more difficult academic.
If you're still in the building, can you please contact the math office, either room 330 or 200.
So like I was saying, I chose U of T. I got into Western as well. I got into Queens, and I was waitlisted for some American schools as well. But I came here because I wanted to stay close to home, but also that it was an environment that challenged you. It was an environment that was intellectually stimulating, which might be all universities, but for me personally, a bigger school, a school with a lot of people, and some of the best faculty from across the world. It seemed exciting. And so when I went in, it was very difficult. I cannot say whether we're harder than other universities, but I do know that people complain a lot. And it is difficult. But I think what helped me choose U of T in the end was, even though it was difficult, I knew that I was going to have a good time. I saw that other people were doing well despite it being difficult. So I don't think it's about how difficult or how easy a university might be. And it's definitely not also about going to the best university in Canada or going to a university that's not as well ranked, but it's just about going to a place where you're going to feel like home. I know when I walk on the U of C campus, I feel like I'm walking at home, and there is no place I would rather be. And so I recommend you to go visit the campus, go research on your school, and pick a school that's right for you. Pick a community that's going to be right for you. I think at the end of the day, to succeed in school, you're going to want an environment where you feel like you're able to succeed, where you feel like you're able to make friends. And at the end of the day, where you feel like you're able to have a good time. So if you don't like big cities, then I wouldn't recommend U of T. If you don't like living in small cities, then I would probably not recommend that you go to Western or McMaster because they're in small cities. So just look at all of the factors, not just how good the education is or not just how good the clubs are, but also just the community and the people in general. And also one of the other things that I would say is, if you can, stay on residence. Stay away from your home at least for a year, because it's not about running away from your parents. It's not about, oh, I can finally do whatever I've wanted to do or eat brownies for breakfast when my parents wouldn't let me when I was living at home. It's just about when you live away from your parents, you tend to learn things that you might not have learned at home, because now you're responsible to feed yourself. Your mom's not going to bring your dinner up when you're too busy to think about eating. You're going to have to remember everything yourself, and you're going to have to wake up in the morning without your mom having to wake you up. And you learn a lot doing that. You learn to make your own friends. You learn to start living on your own, away from, I guess, your parents' protection. And at the end of it, you do end up having a really great time. Having the independence is definitely great. You have enough time to party, and it also teaches you something about time management, and it helps you make better decisions for yourself. Living on res, it's very easy to get carried away with partying, or very easy to get carried away with studying too much. And I think when you analyze yourself, you're able to find the balance within yourself, and sometimes it might be hard to do that when you do live at home. So definitely live on res, and if you guys have any questions about living on residence, then you can definitely ask me. So I always say that you need to plan out all of your deadlines. You need to plan out everything that you have to do. You need to plan out all of your assignments, your projects, your extracurriculars. And that definitely takes a lot of work. And for that, like I said, make a to-do list, or do have minute-to-minute planning for your day. In fact, some of the most successful CEOs get into that habit. But also don't forget to make time for some things that matter the most at the end of the day. So this is a list of things I don't regret making time for myself. So I think that's the first thing, making time for yourself. We're often very bad at it. Currently, I know as I'm in university, not just one, but more than one close friends of mine are going through a lot of mental health issues, and a lot of them have been at points where they have wanted to take their own life, or where they have wanted to hurt themselves. And I think when you see that happen to your close friend, or when you go through those experiences yourself, you do end up realizing how important self-care is. You end up realizing how important mental health is. And as there's more and more awareness towards those mental health issues, these days it's important to remember to take that time off for yourself. Take that time off for something you genuinely like to do, whether it may or may not contribute to a better resume for university, or whether it may not even be something that everyone else, I guess, approves of you doing. And another thing is family and friends. I've always been the person that has tried my best to make time to have a dinner with my family, or see my friends at least once a week. And I know that it might seem like you have too much work, so you might want to ignore your friends, you might want to ignore your family, or you might not even want to have dinner with your family. But I think just taking those time out for, just socializing with the people that you do care about, it it improves your well-being. It also gives you a support system so that in case you're feeling too overwhelmed, you have people to talk to. And these are some of my hobbies up there. So cooking, writing, studying somehow, or researching, and traveling. I don't regret making time for any of those. I have made enough time to study before, and I say that because in university it's very easy to feel guilty for taking the time to study more than someone else's. It's also very easy to feel guilty that you didn't go out partying as much as your other friend did. And so it's important to make time for those things that are actually going to get you the grades. And it's also important to make time for the things that you are going to love doing, like cooking or writing, and just traveling, having new experiences, and meeting new people. And yeah, so what are some of the things that you guys like to do for, I guess, not building up your resume?
I also like to travel.
Where have you been to recently?
I went to Kansas City last month.
That sounds really fun. I actually took a vacation to India just about a year ago, and I had the greatest time of my life. I met up with some of my family, but also I was able to explore Mumbai all on my own because I went without my parents, and it was definitely an experience that taught me a lot. It was a culture shock at first. Even though I'm from India, I just felt like I was put into a completely different environment, but I learned to adapt, I learned to adjust, and I learned what it was like to be resilient. And any person that's especially looking to go into health right now would know that how important resilience is within the healthcare field and just all fields in general. So definitely I'd recommend making the time for some of those things. I recently went to a keynote presentation about someone who went to medical school and just his experiences in general. And I think one of the advices that really stuck out to me wasn't how he made it to med school, wasn't sort of like what he did with his life or what he liked to do, but it was the fact that he put up a slide on his presentation about his family and his little son that's only 40 days old. And I think this is why I took the time to put that on mine. So that's my group of friends, and that's my family on the other side. So find the time for those people. Genuinely, I cannot emphasize enough to make sure that you take the time to appreciate those people who have been there for you throughout all the things that you've done. And also to choose your people wisely, because in university especially, it's very easy to get carried away with friends that might not be your true friends. That might just want to stab you in the back. So it's also very important to make sure that you know who your friends are and that you decide who you're going to keep as a close friend versus who's going to be just a distant friend that you don't regularly interact with. Because recently I had horrible experiences with friends, and that almost caused me to losing a lease and having to pay a couple $1,000. And also to move back from downtown Toronto to home for a while. So it's definitely very, very important to choose the people that you're friends with wisely and choose the people that you're letting into your life wisely. And also to make sure that the people that you are friends with understand that you have commitments. And I know you might not understand it maybe in high school, but as you get to university, you'll realize that a lot of people will tell you to come out with them, or they'll tell you to go to different events with them, and sometimes when you can't, and you might feel scared that, you know, they're gonna get upset. And this is the same conversation that I had with my dad, that if I don't go out as much as my friends do, they might get upset. And my dad explained that if those friends are gonna get upset because you have commitments that you need to fulfill to get ahead in your career and fulfill your own dreams, they might not be your friends at all. So I think it's important to also maintain the balance between socializing and also just doing school things in general. So before delving into all of the logistics of American applications, I'm going to tell you why I applied or chose to apply to American schools. And my first reason was that obviously going to Harvard seemed very attractive. I thought it would somehow make me stand out in the world rather than going to any Canadian school. But also because American schools tend to have a curriculum that focuses a lot more on your holistic development as an individual rather than just on your academics. And at least what it seemed to me from the outside was that they have an environment that really fosters collaborative learning, and that they do want to ensure that all of their students are not just learning whatever they're supposed to learn well, but they're also developing all of those soft skills that are required to succeed in the real world, which is sort of why I chose to apply to American schools. And also I wanted to live in a different country that wasn't too different from Canada. So some of the logistics is that you're going to need to use the Common App. If you haven't heard about it, it's the most frequently used application service for majority of American schools. So you do need an essay, you're going to need extracurricular activities, and you're going to need teacher recommendations and counselor recommendations. And some schools, especially all of the Ivy League schools, they do require a school-specific essay, or they do ask the weirdest of supplemental questions. I know last year UChicago's question was, what's so odd about odd numbers? Or orange is the new black, what is the new of the old? So they do tend to ask weird questions. I feel like this is something that they just like to make students have a difficult time in writing those essays, but it definitely brings out your creative side. And you'll also need to take standardized tests. So there's two tests that you can choose from. There's the SAT and there's the ACT. So the SAT is a more reasoning-based test, and what I mean by that is it's a lot more based on your logic and sort of logical reasoning rather than just straight-up content questions, versus the ACT is knowledge-based. And to illustrate the difference, I guess, so let me just take the math section for example. So a SAT math section would give you a whole background story on some girl who was, I don't know, having to count apples for some reason, and you have to calculate something about that. But I think the harder part in the SAT about is not the calculation, but actually interpreting the question, because the question was just so lengthy and you do not know what they're trying to ask you. Whereas on the ACT, the calculations might be a little tougher, but they're going to ask you the question straight up. They're going to give you an equation to solve. It's not going to be a question that's, I guess, trying to trick you. It's just straight up, you just need to know your stuff. The SAT does not include, yeah?
Did you take both or just one?
I did take both, but I took the old SAT, not the redesigned.
Okay.
Yeah. The SAT does not have a science section. I guess I don't know how many people are aware of that, but if you are good at science, it might be better to take the ACT. And the ACT, like I said, includes the science section. It doesn't test you as much on your knowledge of science as it does on your knowledge of reading graphs and how well you're able to interpret data tables and graphs and just experimental data overall. And lastly, the SAT readings, I find them to be a little bit shorter than the ACT readings, but a lot more difficult in terms of their reading levels. The SAT vocabulary definitely tends to be a lot harder than the ACT. And like I said, the SAT is a test that's trying to confuse you, which is why their readings are much more difficult to interpret. But if you are good at reading, and if vocabulary and just reading and writing is your thing, SAT would probably be a much better test for you. On the contrary, ACT readings are a lot longer, but they're a lot more straightforward. They're also written in modern English rather than writing in English from the 1860s or the Shakespearean times. They are easier in the sense that they're more straightforward, but they're harder in the sense that you're not going to have enough time to complete those readings. I know that the ACT passages are almost a page long, and you have 4 passages, 40 questions, and only 35 minutes. So it is a little bit tighter on the time, but it might be easier for people that don't necessarily enjoy trying to figure out what a sentence is saying and having to reread it about 5 times. I have some tips for stronger essays that you might have to write for American schools. So write an essay that tells your story. It's not about writing an essay that might impress the reader. It's about genuinely putting your story out there, and it's about showing them who you are. That is not included in your extracurriculars, and that's not shown in your marks. And that advice goes for any supplemental essay that you might have to write for your university applications in general, is that the point of the essay is so that the admissions committee gets to know you better. The point of it is to, I guess, portray your personality, show them the kind of person you are, and it's also a chance for you to tell them how your personality is going to be right, or I guess more fitting for whatever you're trying to apply for, whether it's university or some extracurricular. And just remember that your essays have to supplement your application. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times people's application in terms of their essays and grades is very disjointed from their extracurriculars. So what I recommend is that when you're applying for university or even any big conference or any programs in general is to make sure that your application is cohesive, that your marks and your extracurriculars are somewhat linked in your interests, and your essays somehow show that interest beyond just what you're involved in. So for example, if you're trying to apply for a health sci program and your extracurriculars are focused on health sci and your marks are like all biology, chemistry based, then don't turn around to write an essay on something totally different from the skills that might be required for a health professional. So what you could focus your essay on at that point would be the CanMeds rules, which is like having leadership or being collaborative or something like that. So your application that you're building is cohesive and you're able to show your personality as a whole. And also don't use big words to impress the readers. Don't try to write sentences that don't make sense. And don't just go on thesaurus.com and Google a bunch of words and hope that it makes sense, because it's not going to make sense. There's a very fine difference between using more professional sounding words and using big words that make zero sense. So just make sure that you're reading your essay and knowing that whatever you've written is actually conveying a message rather than just a sentence there to fill up words. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. And start in advance. I know so many people, at least when we have to write essays for school, we do try to start the night before and realize and tell ourselves that diamonds are made under pressure. Well, let me tell you, diamonds are made under pressure, but that pressure is for thousands and thousands of years. And it also takes a lot to cut that diamond and polish that diamond. And essays, especially for universities or something like that, you do need to start a couple months in advance and keep working on your essay. And keep editing it and keep making sure that you're constantly updating it, you're constantly having it proofread, and you're making sure that everything's making sense, it's flowing well, and you've said everything that you wanted to say. And always brainstorm your ideas. I know that American school essays specifically, they do ask you to write your feelings about why you want to join a school in 100 words, and 100 words is not enough to say that. And so you do need to brainstorm your ideas, and you need to come up with a final filtered idea that conveys sort of all of your points about what you were trying to say, but also is short, succinct, and it's communicating what you want it to communicate. And that takes a lot of work, and that takes brainstorming. And I have tried to write essays before without brainstorming. Currently, as I write a lot, I write articles every single week. I still brainstorm, and I've had at least 5-6 months of experience in writing articles and in writing compliance reports in general. And if I'm still at the point where I have to brainstorm ideas, I don't think anybody in high school, most people aren't as experienced with writing, so definitely brainstorming is a good idea. And do your research. Do look for what the program is looking for, what the school is looking for. You don't want to just come across as someone that's hardworking, because everyone's hardworking. If they're applying to the program, if they're taking the effort to apply to the program or the school, they probably are a hardworking student. So look for the traits in yourself that might distinguish you from some other students, and make sure that you're presenting those traits creatively. And lastly, your essays should be about how you can contribute to the school. So even if you're not directly saying that, even if you're not directly saying, this is why I'm the best fit for the program, ensure that you sort of portray yourself as a person that has all of the qualities that they're looking for without actually mentioning those qualities. And I think that essays that just tell your story and don't take into account whatever the program is looking for aren't the best essays sometimes. Even though they're well written, they sort of didn't meet the purpose, and they didn't really tell the admissions committee or the readers as to why they should pick you over anyone else. So definitely the most important thing that you should be doing should be a combination between telling your story, but also how that story has prepared you, or I guess shaped you into a person that would be better able to contribute to whatever program or whatever school you're applying to. These are some tips for interviews. Well, I chose specifically alumni interviews because that is something that American applicants have had to do. So all American schools, when you are applying normally on Common App, if available in a city like Toronto, they do offer you the opportunity to take alumni interviews. which is when a normally successful alumni from the school, they come and interview you and they ask you some questions about why you want to go to the school. Just have a chat in general. Often you get a free coffee or a free meal out of it, which is always nice. But so the first thing that I would recommend is take the alumni interview. It's not going to hurt your application. It's only going to make it better unless you've left the interview sticking up the middle finger, which you probably shouldn't in the first place. But alumni interviews are a chance to actually exhibit your personality beyond your words. Sometimes people might not be good writers, but they are good speakers. And when you are at an interview, you have the chance to communicate that through your body language, through your charisma. And that's definitely a great chance to have, and it can definitely add on to your application. I know that my interviewer for Yale was actually very close to someone on the admissions committee. So if you make a good impression, it can definitely help you a lot and portray that you're a right fit for the school. You definitely don't just want to blabble on about yourself and your experiences without really showing why that really matters to the school that you're applying to. And you do want to do the research about their school, even for your essays or just for your interviews in general. I know that the way that I asked my interviewers questions specifically for the alumni interviews was having researched the small things about the school that not everyone might know about. For example, what was it like to have snacks in the buttery at midnight? Or what was it like to have that like monthly tea that you have? Because at Yale, they always have a tradition that every single month they bring a famous personality to have tea with them on their residences. So that's something I asked a Yale interviewer. And so always look up the small things about the school that might not be sort of very public on their website, and definitely include those in your essays as well as your interviews, because that really shows how passionate you are about the school and about the program in general. And do research about that person that you're being interviewed by. If you, in alumni interviews specifically, you do have the luxury of knowing who your interviewer is going to be. Most interviewers would have a LinkedIn page. It's not very hard to Google their name and find out what they're doing with their life. And that always gives you a chance to prepare in advance. It also allows you to think of good topics to have engaging conversations with, which is sometimes very important because like you always hear, the best business deals aren't made when you're talking about business. They're made when you're talking about something else like tea, coffee, or wine, or just having a casual chat about politics. So definitely make sure that you know sort of what you want to talk about other than yourself. And also having chats about things that aren't just your experiences shows that you're a person that's aware of the world, aware of what's going on in the world, and you're just a socially aware and a cultured person. And don't be afraid to brag in the interview along with it. Don't be afraid to show how your experiences would make you a better fit for their school or for their program in general. Don't be shy, because you are there to brag, and they do want to know about your experiences. They do want to know about your story, and that is what they're there for. So make sure you're bragging enough, not too much to make yourself look too overconfident. Just stay humble as you brag. Ask them questions, and if sometimes they are giving you advice on how to improve, which did happen in not just one but multiple of my alumni interviews, take that advice with a grain of salt, and remember that each interview is a learning experience. That's how I always go into one. I didn't make it to MIT, but I'm probably always going to remember my alumni interview for MIT. It was with a lady, and we had the best conversation for about 2 hours. And we just talked about everything from stem cells to politics to my application in general. And I made a new contact. I networked with a new person that I can probably at least wish Merry Christmas to. And if I ever need a job or if I ever need an internship, I know definitely that I can ask her for help, even if she's not able to directly give me that internship. So it's important to make those connections. And sometimes we often forget that, and interviews are a great way to make those connections. So definitely take any chances that you might have for doing interviews. Which does bring me to sort of, I guess, the end of my presentation. And this is one of the quotes that I like to tell myself. It's something that I came up with. And it's that busy is a blessing, so hustle harder and stay kind. I think I've been a person that wasn't very busy in my high school years. I've also been a person that went through a lot of mental health issues during my high school years, but as I stepped into university, I figured out what I like to do. I figured out the extracurriculars that I might be interested in, the experiences that I might be interested in having, and just I made myself into a person that's a lot more open, that wants to accomplish a lot, but also a person that wants to learn a lot. And I think the attitude of always wanting to learn is what gets you farther. And sometimes you realize that as you've gone through a year and a half in university, it's not about getting that degree in the end. It's about stepping out of university, and after 4 years, you're able to look yourself in the mirror and you're able to tell yourself that you made something out of yourself. You learned a lot of new things and you've become a person that you're proud of. Because even if that 4 years of university fails you in the sense that you're not able to get into the professional school that you were looking to get into, I at least hope that your experiences that you've had throughout your life will have molded you into a person to be successful in any career, to be resilient in any sort of situation, even if that situation is not getting into your dream job or your dream school at the very first try. And sometimes I know it's very easy to get stressed. It's very easy to put too much on your plate and feel like you're really overwhelmed and your friends aren't doing enough compared to you. So I always tell myself that being busy is a blessing. There are days that I don't have the time to sleep, but I try to get my sleep. There are days where I don't have the time to see my friends or even call them or give them a hello. And there are times when I don't want to get up and work, but at the end of the day, I try to remind myself that because I am this busy, it is a blessing to be living in a country that's full of opportunities. Being from a country like India where I didn't have enough opportunities, I constantly try to tell myself that whatever I'm doing, I'm lucky enough to be doing, and I'm lucky enough to love what I'm doing. So I guess what I want to leave you guys with at the end of my presentation is that stay open in your life, mold yourself into a person that's constantly open to learning new things, and keep learning and keep reading and keep becoming aware of the world while you try into life, whether it's in your university careers or somewhere else, because I know that at the end of the day, it's not about what you know that's going to help you go forward in life. It's about who you know, and it's about the type of person you are, because we don't carry our grades, we don't carry our degrees, and we don't carry our qualifications to our grave. What we do carry is the type of person that we've led ourselves to become. Thank you, guys.